So you're gonna see two guys that gave a great conference, a great speech at the first LPC 3 years ago. The title was exotic but excellent. It was called "What the Fuck." So what is your first use case, basically? So I hope you guys feel the pressure because we're looking forward to hearing you. So you're gonna have a talk from Rémi, VP Product at BlaBlaCar, and Tristan, Head of UX. Give them a round of applause, please.
So I'm happy to be here. I'm Rémi. This is Tristan. First, why do we want to make this presentation in English? It's actually very simple. It's because we believe that this event can become a much bigger event. But for this, I think we need to adopt the universal language of our community. And I'm sure that in the future, we'll be able to have more speakers like Satish, like Seema, coming from all over the world. So we want to convince everyone to try to give a try at English conferences. So let's see how it goes. So what we're going to talk about today is how can you design a playbook for your team. We're going to describe how we did it. And as you can see, on all the seats there was a sheet of paper. So you'll be able to actually do the exercise with us. So first, just to understand who is in the room, if you were here 2 years ago, and you saw our conference, can you raise your hand? All right. So for those of you who were there 2 years ago, I have good news and bad news. So the good news is, if you're expecting this conference to be with a lot of jokes, this is not going to happen. So if this is what you're expecting, so stand-up comedy, this is not going to be the case. So don't worry, no bad jokes. The bad news is you're going to have to work. All right? So you all have a sheet of paper and a pen, and you're going to have to actually work with us during the whole conference. So we're going to give it a try and see if you're able to follow. Let's try. We're BlaBlaCar. What is your company name? So please write it on a piece of paper. I see some people struggling. This is not the difficult part of the presentation. So give it a try. What is your company name? Write it down. If you see your neighbor not doing it, give him an elbow. All good? All right. So if we think about BlaBlaCar and the challenges we have, I think there's a lot of new things happening at BlaBlaCar in 2018. So one of them is early January, we announced that we would have a new brand identity. So this is a big change. The brand of BlaBlaCar hadn't changed for a long time, so this is a big change we announced. We also decided to entirely rethink our matching algorithm. BlaBlaCar is a long-distance carpooling marketplace. We match drivers and passengers who are going along the same trip, but the way we're matching them is totally different. Before, we were forcing the driver to try to guess where it would be easy for passengers to actually hop on. Now we're trying to be much more passenger-based and to just let the drivers trust the BlaBlaCar algorithm. This is a big change for our members. The last change is that we're introducing a new design for the product. And if you combine all those three changes, it's an entire new experience that we're bringing to the members of BlaBlaCar. The thing is, it's a lot of changes, but we're already available in more than 20 countries, and we already have more than 60 million people using the product. The reason I'm talking about this is just to explain to you in with a couple of facts, what is our challenge. Our challenge is that we want to provide a lot of changes, even though we're already far from being a tiny startup. So I want you to think about your own situation and think about what is your context and try to write it down. Just with a couple of words, what is specific to you? Are you a huge company? Are you based in Nantes? Are you trying to conquer the world? Are you working for B2B? What is specific about your company in 2018? I'll give you a couple of seconds to think about this. It's going to be very important for the rest of the presentation. don't cheat. It's not going to help you. All right, so let's continue. When, with Tristan, when we were thinking about those challenges, we were trying to think, how are we going to help all our members get on board with all those changes? And actually, after thinking about it for a long time, we were like, maybe we need to change before our members actually change. We need to be the first one to adapt to all those changes before we ask everyone else to do the same thing. So we actually, went on a trip, took a BlaBlaCar, went to a city called Tours for a couple of days, and we tried to identify what were the right things we would need to change on as a team. And we realized that what we were missing was a team playbook. So the name playbook is coming from the sports industry. So when you want all your players in your team to actually know the type of tactics they can have, you define a playbook. So if you think about American football, they have huge playbooks, like thick like this, with all the tactics that your team can use, and each player knows them by heart. And we thought, okay, this is what we need. We need a playbook for our team. We don't have something that is properly defined. The thing is, there's so many playbooks available. If you type product playbook, UX playbook, you're going to find so many sources of inspiration. And we look at some of those, and then we realize, actually, they're super interesting, but they're not relevant to us. So we discovered that we need to invent our own playbook. And it turns out that actually we've done this a couple of times at BlaBlaCar in other companies, and over time we've improved the process. So we believe that there's four ingredients that are key to have the perfect playbook for your team. You need to make it inspiring, you need to have it tailored for you, you need to have it actionable, and you need to make it memorable. So this is what we're going to cover, all those four ingredients. And for the first one, for the inspiration, I have to turn over to Tristan because he's, as you're going to discover, he's able to take you far away.
All right. So the inspiring part of things, why do we want an inspiring playbook? I think the main reason for us is to make sure that this playbook is kind of scalable, even inside the company, and that people could bring the list of recommendation or list of exercises way beyond what has been defined at the very beginning. So it's very important that we find maybe a metaphor or something that drives the playbook way beyond the initial thought. And for us, using an inspiring metaphor is very useful for that. Our concern was to define just a checklist of good practices, of things that we thought was useful, and not enable the team to think beyond and to make it much bigger than the initial thought. So, so to make it inspiring, is just finding a metaphor that first resonates with you, because you're going to be the person thinking of that at first. So some people can get inspired by futuristic metaphor, movies, technologies, some AI right now, or self-driving car, or whatever inspires you. You can find inspiration through nature. So a couple of months ago, I heard a playbook around the water itself and the different stage of water. It can be steam, it can be liquid, it can be solid, and that was connected to a roadmap and project where you have very hard project and you have liquid project, etc. So that works as well. It could be around life, it could be around growth. So there are many metaphors you can find in nature. And this one is the one I like the most, is the human achievement. So builders, explorers, leaders. I like it because it's kind of easy to connect with the human behavior, human values. So if you think about a brilliant leader or brilliant achievement, then it's quite easy to connect with big thing that person achieved and see how it fits with your team growth and your expectation. So for BlaBlaCar, the metaphor we've been using is this one up, that beautiful city of Paris. That was, to tell the truth, that was one of the list, probably on the top one. We loved it because on the surface, it's quite easy to connect with what we're doing. We are a French tech company. We're pretty much active in that ecosystem. So Paris is an interesting referential. We have a headquarter in Paris, and we have an international team. And this is an international city with something that we all share. Basically, we're all like walking those streets, going to work. So there was like interesting sign that okay, that metaphor could work for us. But that's the very, very beginning of our thought. And then as you move forward, you start digging a little bit into your metaphor. And so next step is thinking about okay, what Paris is about, where it comes from. And so that's a little bit of story. So I grew up here, and I've kind of felt that was Paris forever. Probably that evolved along the years, but it's so old it looks like it was like this forever, and it's absolutely wrong. The truth is, if you just go back 150 years ago, it was just a disgusting and horrible city. It was a place where you don't want to live. And I find an interesting comment. Sorry, that's going to be just the French moment, because I didn't find a way to translate it in English I could really understand, so I'm going to say it in French. But just for you to grasp the context of that city at this time, so it was a philosopher that wrote that. Paris, c'est un immense atelier de putréfaction où la misère, la peste et les maladies travaillent de concert, où ne pénètre guère l'air ni le soleil. Paris, c'est un mauvais lieu où les plantes s'étiolent et périssent, et où sur 7 petits enfants, il en meurt 4 dans l'année. So that was Paris just 150 years ago. It was a horrible and disgusting city for those who didn't get that piece of French. And something fantastic happened. Something that as you dig into, you realize how big it is over the course of the next 20 years, some guys, 2 main guys and a lot of others, transformed that city into the beautiful one that you know today. So they really, really transformed an environment that was already filled with 1 million of people, that has a lot of habits that are against change as everyone, and they find a way to completely transform that environment. So as we dig into that, we feel like, okay, maybe there's more than expected, and maybe it makes really sense to use that metaphor.
So try to take a couple of seconds and try to think of what metaphor could be inspiring to you. Think about the context that you defined right before, and just try to jot down a couple of ideas. It's okay if it's not the perfect one. Just try to come up with a couple of ideas, a couple of metaphors, sources of inspiration that could make sense for you. Because this is going to be interesting for the rest afterwards. No one is going to ask you to read what you're writing. You can read stupid stuff. It's okay. So take a couple of seconds. What could be an inspiring metaphor for your own situation? We'll let you think a bit more. And you'll see that maybe you're going to have better ideas over the course of the coming days, and that's okay. This is the first draft. It's to help you go through the whole process. So let's continue. What do we do after?
Okay. So once you have it, once you have 1, 2, or 3 inspiring metaphors, the next step is to tailor that metaphor, to find the connection between that story and your context, where you want to go. Tailored is a very important word for playbook. As Remy mentioned, there are plenty of playbook, but there's only one that really resonates with what you want to do, is the one that's tailored to you. Tailored to your context, but also tailored to your team and how your team needs to progress, the important pillars of your team. So that's exactly the exercise. Okay, Paris, okay, there's one guy, which is Napoleon III, that basically was the driver of that. And what are the common challenges he faced through that transformation and that we are facing or we want to face? And so there's a chicken and egg thing, right? So you think about your challenges, you connect it back to this guy and then back to your team, etc. And at the end of the day, you find pillars. And that's the pillars we find. Immersion, altitude, pitch, radicality, and systems. That's the main pillar that we want to work on and we want to develop within the team that we believe will help us moving to the next stage. So immersion, on the Paris perspective, that's basically why Napoleon hired Haussmann the big guy, the hands-on guy. He was very, very much into all this administrative system, and he was the guy able to make things happening at this time. It was not a period where one king could decide for everyone. It was an advanced and complex society. So the guy was very much into that. Our connection with what we want to do is to help our guys to better understand same thing, this ecosystem, all those mechanisms, but on a consumer standpoint. So how do we help our guys from the team to better understand how people think, act, and feel? Second is the altitude. And because Napoleon was born at a very tough period, if you're the nephew of the previous emperor, just after the revolution, he had to live on another country, especially in the UK, in London, where he had a very great opportunity to step back from France to look at what's happening beyond borders. And the story says that when he was back to France, he already had a big map with what Paris should become within 20 years. He was very stepping back from that. So that's what we want for the team as well, is even though every single person sometimes is within a silo, is very focused, we want to make sure that they step back and they find forcing mechanism to step back and to look at the big picture. The pitch thing, so here you see Haussmann, and for the Paris story, people used to say Haussmann was able to pitch his vision over a course of 7 hours with no stop. And that's a very powerful tool, like being able to pitch your ideas and embark the rest of the team, even beyond your own team with you. And so that's an exercise we also want to practice a lot within the team. The radicality, that's a value that we're very interested about as well. Is if you think about Paris, it was a very dense city with very small street. You even can't pass with a car. There was very few cars. That was fine, but imagine a super dense city, and you want to create boulevard, like 60 meters with boulevard within that city. That's kind of radical if you think about what it means to do. And that's where we want also to help the team moving forward, is develop conviction first with altitude, with stepping back, and then being super bold in making decisions, being radical. The last step is the system, and as a designer, that makes a lot of echoes. Is if you look at what Paris looks like, there's a sense of consistency that's absolutely beautiful. If you look at Boulevard, they're extremely consistent with the balconies at the 2nd and the 5th floor, with the height of the building that is connected with the width of the boulevard, with 55 degrees roof. It's absolutely stunning how much it's consistent and how much they apply a language for every single building, even though the builder is different. So those guys were able to think about something bigger than just what they're doing for the moment to create that beautiful consistency. So the system is the last part of it that we really care of for the team. And so that's the resume of it. Immersion, altitude, pitch, radicality, and system. That's the value we want to work on with the team.
So now over to you. Try to think about the challenge, the context that you define, maybe the inspiring metaphor that you thought about. What are you concerned about regarding your team? What is your team going to need to change in order to address those challenges? So maybe things you already have identified today. What are the things that you think your team, maybe you as a person or other people in your team, need to become better at in order to face the challenges that you're facing? So again, try to jot down a couple of ideas that seem to resonate with you. Some might be the same that the one we're sharing. Some might be totally different. And there's no perfect answer. There's only the one that seems to be tailored for you. Again, a couple of seconds for you to just jot some ideas that you can come back to after the conference. I can see some people very serious about this. Thank you. Others a bit less. That's okay too. So let's continue. So you have your inspiring metaphor. You've tried to tailor it about your specific team. Now let's try to make it actionable. And here there's really 2 major approaches. Either you define very specific activities that you want your team members to do in order to go along those lines you define. That's one approach. Another approach is to actually let the team discover itself what are the right things to do. Both approaches work, The second approach, the more open one, is easier when the team already knows each other very well. The more closed approach is probably a better one when your team is either very new or maybe a bit junior regarding the challenge coming up. So we chose a very open approach, which means that we basically just gave to the whole team the 5 big directions, and then the team was free to come up with ways to implement it. So let's talk about immersion for a second, and let's see what happened. How did our team, try to take this big idea and do something very specific with it? The first thing we did actually to, immerse ourselves in the inspiring metaphor was to do a guided tour of Paris. So we had a walking guiding tour to understand what happened, 150 years ago, and that could be a source of, dense inspiration. And one thing that actually we realized is that we have at BlaBlaCar a big culture of using our own product. What you see here is what we call the wall of the ambassadors. So it's all the employees who are also very active users of the product, right? So we have this culture at BlaBlaCar. The thing is, when our team started to think about immersion, we realized that maybe that was not enough. And one of our PM, Nico, was working on a topic where actually the very specific trips we were trying to be better at was not from Paris city center to Le Mans city center, but maybe from the suburbs of Paris to a small village outside of Le Mans, which from a travel standpoint is very different. In order to deeply feel this, they organized, you can see on the photo on the left, Victoria, one of our user researchers, she has a hat with small pieces of paper, and lots of people in the team had to tick 2 random cities, and then they had to do this very specific trip with BlaBlaCar. And those were always outside of the big cities, so it was much harder than the typical trip we usually do when we try to carpool. This immersion was a way to fight against the major bias we have, because our office is right in the middle of Paris. So every time we do a BlaBlaCar trip, we're already ignoring all the reality of a lot of our members. So that was the first step. Then we had Sylvia, who is our content specialist. She was like, yeah, but we still have a major bias, which is we do these trips in France, and we're available in 22 countries. So maybe we need to carpool in the other markets we have. So here you can see on the upper right, Sylvia in a carpool in Brazil. And we've had so many people that started to do those trips outside and carpool while they were doing those trips in other markets. And for example, we have here in our room, we have Artabaz, one of our PM, who knew that in Brazil, sometime you get canceled. So you book a BlaBlaCar, and at the last minute, the driver says, you know what, actually, I'm not going to do the trip. But it's one thing to know about this problem. It's another to be in this situation when you're stood up at the last minute. And I'm pretty sure that if I talk to Artabaz another time about cancellation rate in Brazil, it's going to have a much deeper connection through the heart. And then we're like, okay, that's very nice, but that does not scale. I mean, the second we need an insight, we can't just fly over to Sao Paulo and do a carpool. So we had Caroline, another of our user researcher, was like, we need to find a way to make it scale. And she invented WhatsApp focus groups. What does that mean? She sent an email to a couple of drivers who were about to do a trip in the coming hours, and she told them, hey, if you're interested, sign up to this WhatsApp group, and I'll be asking questions along the way, and whatever is happening at that time, just share it with me. And with this way now, we've discovered a great way to do immersion in the sense to understand the reality of our members through their eyes in real time at 0 cost. And we can do this in any market, any language. This is something that I'm pretty convinced would not have come up from the team if we hadn't said, you know what, immersion is extremely important. And I'm pretty sure that our playbook is going to continue to grow with new ideas, new activities, because it's an open playbook. But let's take another example on the system side.
Okay, to the system piece. So a system, as we discussed today, just a couple of minutes before, Paris system, design system, consistency. And so we build a team, that's called the Lego team, to build a design system. So system, the metaphor, and what we care about is to really realize that we contribute to something bigger. So we create an overall rule, an overarching rule, and everybody is contributing to that. So just talking about the Lego stuff. So Lego is our metaphor for design system. We create that, and why we call it Lego is because like a couple of years ago, when first design system started to show up, there was a fear on the designer world that a design system is a hard stop to creativity. That if we create the element first, then what are a designer going to do? And we don't create anything, we just, use existing bricks. And that's actually what Lego is about, is you're playing with that, you never create a brick, but as you're playing with brick, it remains an extremely creative game, probably one of the most creative games. So that's why we call that Lego. Our design system is Lego, because we have the bricks, but you can do whatever you want with the bricks. So it's basically a library, a system library that has, you saw the tab bar, you see the title with every single element that will help building the interface. And it's not only the bricks, but you also have some guidelines associated with that include content guideline. So what you want to use and how you want to use and how you want to talk, that includes a ton of voice. So a lot of rules that will help designer building screens on their own, in their side, but contributing to something much bigger. And so thinking about that system and the Paris metaphor, we had people that were super inspired and that pushed that system super, super far. So this is Nico, he's the designer, and he designed most of the Pixar, of the Lego library. And one of his obsession is the consistency. So you see that's two pictures of Paris, one picture with the design system and another one with no design system. I'll let you judge which one you prefer, but there's one that's extremely consistent and that feels like one entity. The other one, if I would told you now that it's actually London or Singapore, you would probably trust that. So that's his obsession, that beautiful consistency of such a boulevard. And so he pushed that and he figured out what does it mean within our product. And so he is super radical, but so that's another value he applies, extremely radical in how we want to apply our system in our experience. So you see that with that obsession, he makes review, he pushes hard the project team to align with the Pixar, with the Lego rules. Then that's where we are right now. It is a feeling of consistency, whatever is the screen and whatever is the channel. So of course, if you're opening the BlaBla app right now, you won't feel the same. This is what we are working on right now. But that's a reality behind the curtain. So that's that's how he applied that systematic approach and that system value. Another example about his radicality is he wanted to be consistent, whatever is the platform. So he built a design system that is platform agnostic, and so you have exactly the same behavior and element, whether you're on iOS, on Android, or on a mobile web, even on desktop. So that's a radical person applying system. Another example is Ben, who is the product manager of that Lego environment, and Ben is very much about simplicity. And that's two very beautiful examples. I would say I love Barcelona, it's a beautiful place. This is not about simplicity, and it's pretty stunning. You see how simple is one Haussmannian building. Maybe one is not exceptional, but 1,000 is one of the most beautiful cities you can see. So there's something very interesting with that. And so by thinking about the design system, by applying some still very radical rules, they found a way to make the design system hard to be cluttered, because there are rules. You can't put many information. You have to remove, you have to clean up. And that's a piece of work they did from an old search result to a new search result. And just by applying every strict rule of their system, they force the interface to be much cleaner and simpler. That's another example of what they did with emails. As you can imagine, that's not an easy process. It requires a lot of radicality as well. But that's a stunning result that they come up by being inspired by those values. Yeah.
So let's take a second for you to try to think about, what are the equivalent? What are the things you would need to do in your team in order to apply the big directions you identified in the box and in the answer before? I think we're slightly late on time, so I'm going to move on to the next session, but you can probably continue the exercise at home after. And let's move on to the last part, which is how do you make this memorable? The reason why we think making it memorable matters is actually a playbook has no value if your team is not fully adopting it. And one of my personal mentors, called Ulrich da Costa, once told me that the worst playbook is when you don't have one, and the best one is the one that everyone knows by heart. That's the big definition. Everything else doesn't matter. If you have an amazing playbook that no one is using, it's like you didn't have any. So you have to find a way for your whole team to know the playbook by heart. There's many ways you can do this. Hopefully, a lot of the thorough work you did at the beginning is going to make it resonate with your team. But maybe you need to find a trick. In our particular case, we look for a very simple trick. And maybe some of you in the room, I know there's some brilliant minds here, have guessed it. So if you actually take those 5 words, you put them in the right order, you focus on the first letter, and you have the name that inspired us from the beginning. And that ensures us that every single person in our team remembers what the Paris Playbook is about. Thank you.
C'est bon?
And I think we have a couple of minutes for questions.
Yes, we have. We've got lots of minutes. Pour les questions, on a dit, vous pouvez poser en anglais ou en français. So you can ask a question either in French or English. I actually forgot to mention the Wisdomly application, app.wisdomly.com/LPC0. If you want to ask the question using the mic, just raise your hand as well. Donc on a quelques questions autour de... alors attends, je reprends. Globalement, avec qui vous avez créé ce playbook? Avec qui vous l'avez créé? Comment vous avez géré l'engagement des fondateurs? Quelle a été leur réaction? Est-ce qu'ils y ont participé? Et est-ce qu'il y a eu du scepticisme en interne au début du projet? Voilà, c'est plusieurs questions regroupées en une seule.
Alors c'est un playbook, donc le playbook qu'on vient de partager, il a été créé essentiellement par Tristan et par moi. Et l'idée, le compromis qu'on a trouvé, en fait on pense que c'est difficile de trouver quelque chose qui a beaucoup de sens si c'est créé à base d'un consensus. Donc on n'était pas convaincu que de faire avec l'ensemble de l'équipe, ça aboutirait à un résultat qui serait un peu tranché comme celui qu'on vient de présenter. Par contre, le choix a été fait de créer un playbook très ouvert pour que l'équipe soit capable de se l'approprier. Donc c'est un playbook qui a été créé par Tristan et moi. Et est-ce qu'il y a eu du scepticisme? Il faudrait poser la question aux personnes de Blablacar qui sont dans la salle. N'hésitez pas à leur poser les questions à la pause. Mais en fait, la raison d'être de ce playbook, elle est vraiment liée au contexte que j'ai partagé au début. Et là-dessus, il n'y avait aucun travail d'évangélisation à faire. Tous les employés de Blablacar aujourd'hui savent que l'année 2018, c'est une année charnière. Il y a beaucoup de changements qu'on est en train de pousser. Et donc, en particulier, les gens de l'équipe Product and Experience étaient parfaitement conscients de ça. Donc, il n'y avait aucun travail de notre part à faire. Ce qui était nécessaire, c'est de faire des choix, de choisir les axes de développement particuliers sur lesquels on allait s'investir. C'est ça, je pense, qui a fait la différence, et aussi d'avoir un nombre d'axes de travail qui était relativement limité, en l'occurrence que 5.
Une petite chose en plus, vous avez remarqué qu'il y a quelqu'un du produit et quelqu'un du design, et c'est pas neutre, c'est-à-dire qu'on a une culture aussi de fusionner les équipes. Donc on a une équipe product and experience, et ce playbook il est autant valable pour des designers que pour des product managers. Je pense que chacun sur chaque élément peut y trouver des vrais leviers y compris de développement personnel à l'intérieur, et autant pour les designers que pour les product managers. C'était quelque chose qui est important pour nous aussi, c'est de faire passer ce message qu'en fait, on a une vision qui regroupe le produit et le design, on travaille autour des mêmes objectifs, des mêmes valeurs, et on travaille ensemble. Peut-être que la prochaine étape, ce sera aussi de faire ça avec la technologie pour avoir un vrai alignement autour de valeurs communes, chaque valeur étant suffisamment large pour que chacun y trouve sa place, mais qu'elle soit partagée par l'ensemble de l'équipe. Et vous avez vu dans la liste des interprétations de ce playbook, il y a autant des achievements côté product que côté design. Et finalement, c'est à la fin même difficile de savoir qui a fait quoi. Lorsqu'on a fait les derniers slides et qu'on se demandait qui a fait quoi, on avait même du mal à se souvenir si c'était un designer ou un product manager. Et ça, je crois que c'est quelque chose d'assez fort, et c'est un des résultats de cette approche.
Ça marche? Okay. Another question, this one in English, I'm not going to try to translate it. According to you, how did your design background, both of you, got any influence on your approach? Do you think like any regular PM would have had the same approach in the creation of this playbook?
I don't know. It's a good question. I don't know. I don't think the notion of a playbook has anything to do with design or product. As I mentioned, it starts from the sports domain. So I think maybe the core thing that we had at heart was to be very explicit about the things that we care about, the things that everyone in the team needs to have in mind. And I don't think this has anything to do with a product or design. And so I don't know what would have happened if I had a much longer experience in product management. But I don't think that was the secret sauce. No.
Une autre question plus concrète. Maintenant que vous avez construit ce playbook, comment vous l'utilisez concrètement au quotidien?
C'est un outil. En fait, ce qui est intéressant, c'est une bonne question parce que ce qui est intéressant, c'est qu'il y a une phase de création très excitante, il y a une phase de premier delivery qui est aussi très excitante, et puis après, il y a une longue phase de répétition, de push permanent. C'est compliqué l'adoption d'un framework, même si on a essayé de le rendre très actionnable, donc de le faire descendre dans le quotidien, de connecter quelque chose d'inspirant et de quotidien. En fait, c'est un travail de répétition permanent. Donc ça, c'est un vrai effort à faire. Mais ce qui est intéressant, c'est qu'au bout d'un moment, on commence à entendre des interconnexions entre des gens qui parlent de pitch. Ah, il faut travailler le pitch, ou il faut un petit peu d'altitude. Quand on commence à entendre ces mots-là dans le discours du quotidien, ça devient vraiment intéressant. Et puis, on a essayé de faire en sorte de connecter aussi les objectifs de développement personnel de l'équipe avec ces piliers-là. Donc, dans les objectifs de semestre ou d'année des product managers et des designers, il y a le rappel de ces valeurs-là, de progresser sur une dimension de radicalité, sur une dimension d'immersion. Donc en fait, pour essayer de forcer un peu l'adoption, on essaye de multiplier le nombre de points d'entrée pour en faire quelque chose de vraiment fondamental dans ce que c'est que de grandir en tant que product manager ou en tant que designer chez BlaBlaCar.
Alors justement, il y a une question là-dessus. Est-ce que de façon plus concrète, sur la diffusion en interne du playbook, ça se caractérise comment? Des réunions avec les différentes équipes, je sais pas, vous faites circuler un livre en interne?
Un exemple qu'on a mis en place récemment, mais c'est un exemple parmi... En fait, c'est la multitude d'exemples qui sûrement racontera la meilleure histoire, mais un autre exemple qu'on n'a pas mentionné ici, avec les différents product managers de BlaBlaCar, tous les vendredis après-midi, on a ce qu'on appelle une altitude session. Qu'est-ce que c'est? C'est simplement, il y a zéro préparation, chaque product manager vient les mains dans les poches s'il a des poches, et grosso modo, il partage de la vision la plus élevée possible ce sur quoi il est en train de travailler. Donc c'est souvent des enjeux extrêmement stratégiques, à ce moment-là on n'est pas dans les problèmes d'exécution, et il partage simplement les problèmes qu'il rencontre. On fait un tour de table avec chaque PM, et il y a un sujet qui semble être le plus compliqué ou le plus difficile, et là toute l'équipe essaye d'aider le product manager à résoudre ce problème-là. Voilà, c'est extrêmement simple, c'est rien d'incroyable, peut-être que vous faites déjà ça et vous l'appelez un autre nom, mais je pense que l'idée d'avoir cette session-là, elle est en partie inspirée du playbook, te dire tiens, comment est-ce qu'on pourrait prendre plus d'altitude sur nos projets? Une manière pour des PM assez classiques de partager ce qu'ils font, c'est de partager des choses extrêmement opérationnelles, je vais sortir telle feature à telle date, etc. Nous, on pense qu'aujourd'hui, les grands challenges qu'on a chez BlaBlaCar, ils sont un cran au-dessus. Ils sont quelle est la bonne stratégie, comment est-ce que ces deux projets, dans un an, peut-être vont avoir des visions contradictoires, etc. Donc voilà, c'est un exemple en fait, et c'est juste simplement de regarder tout ce qu'on fait à travers ces 5 filtres-là, et de se dire, tiens, est-ce qu'il y a une autre manière de faire? Et peut-être que l'autre réponse, c'est beaucoup d'expérimentation. Le playbook, il est extrêmement ouvert, il y a plein d'idées qu'on ne partage pas, qui ont été des échecs complets, et ça n'a absolument aucune importance. L'important, c'est de se dire, tiens, il faut qu'on se réinvente, il faut qu'on change, essayons des nouvelles manières de travailler, et peut-être qu'il y en a certaines d'entre elles qui vont résonner et qui vont nous permettre d'accomplir les challenges qu'on a identifiés.
Alors une question concrète aussi, la différence entre un playbook et design principles. Est-ce qu'il y en a une? Est-ce que ça se complète?
Ouais, je crois qu'on peut trouver des playbooks qui ressemblent à l'un et des autres qui ressemblent à l'autre. Peut-être que pour nous, la clé, c'est que Design Principle, il y a une orientation design, ne serait-ce que dans le nom, c'est pas du tout l'objectif qu'on a. C'est bien au-delà de sujets de design, c'est aussi des sujets de développement personnel, comme je le disais tout à l'heure. Donc c'est quelque chose de probablement un petit peu plus large et qui doit en même temps emmener une sorte de stratégie, être connecté avec notre stratégie d'entreprise et en même temps des choses très actionnables, comme pourrait être un playbook d'une équipe de football américain qui aurait des choses très de grande ampleur et de grands mouvements et en même temps de comportements extrêmement précis. Donc je crois que le mot design, il porterait un petit peu de biais dans une orientation très design, alors que le playbook me semblait plus large que ça.
Il y a 2 autres questions sur le même thème. Comment ce playbook s'articule avec les valeurs de l'entreprise Blablacar?
Alors on n'a pas cherché particulièrement à les aligner, donc c'était une sorte d'exercice là qui était vraiment centré sur l'équipe Product and Experience. Il se trouve que ça résonne énormément. Par exemple, on a une des valeurs chez Blablacar, une des valeurs d'entreprise qui s'appelle Be the Member. Les membres, c'est les utilisateurs de Blablacar. Évidemment qu'elle résonne particulièrement bien avec la notion d'immersion. Il y a d'autres valeurs de Blablacar qui ne sont pas forcément représentées là, mais en fait, l'exercice, il était précisément de se dire où est-ce que nous, en tant qu'équipe, on doit progresser. Et donc peut-être qu'en fait, il y a certains sujets qui sont très courants chez Blablacar sur lesquels on n'avait pas forcément besoin de progresser parce que l'ensemble de l'entreprise nous a déjà porté, nous a déjà amené à un certain niveau. Par contre, il y a certains sujets qui sont propres à nos métiers où là, il va falloir qu'on soit meilleur. Par exemple, la notion de radicalité, c'est quelque chose qui n'est pas forcément complètement présent dans la culture de Blablacar. Le fait qu'on soit une communauté, le fait qu'on soit relativement consensuel dans plein de manières de faire, ça ne coïncide pas complètement avec le besoin dans la construction de notre produit de faire des choix qui sont parfois extrêmement tranchés, un petit peu durs à accepter, un petit peu durs à raconter. Et donc, par exemple, le fait que la radicalité, ce soit important, on essaie de l'associer avec le fait qu'il faut savoir raconter des meilleures histoires, donc la notion de pitch. Donc en fait, il y a plein d'allers-retours entre les valeurs de l'entreprise, entre différents piliers de notre playbook. Donc voilà, il y a parfois des correspondances, parfois pas, et on n'a pas spécialement cherché à les aligner. C'est pas contradictoire, mais c'est pas 100% aligné, sinon ça aurait été extrêmement redondant.
Alors on va terminer avec une dernière question, un peu provocatrice. Est-ce que c'est uniquement en situation de crise qu'on trouve la force de se réinventer? Je ne sais pas si la personne fait référence à des éléments concrets. Et si la question est pertinente, mais je la pose.
Alors bien sûr que c'est d'autant plus facile quand on est conscient des problèmes qu'on a devant nous, qu'on se rend compte qu'on doit changer. Et je pense que le risque de plein d'entreprises qui sont en pleine croissance, c'est peut-être de se croire invincible. Et donc je pense que ça nous a aidé en fait à se rendre compte et à regarder droit dans les yeux les changements qu'on devait opérer. Oui.
Après, je ne crois pas que ce soit systématique. On a vécu et construit des playbooks dans des entreprises qui étaient absolument pas en crise. Je crois que c'est surtout une bonne pratique en général et peut-être que dans les moments de crise, ça devient encore plus évident qu'on en a besoin. Mais ce que disait Ulrich, la citation de tout à l'heure, le fait d'avoir un playbook, c'est une vraie aide, c'est une vraie North Star qui emmène un petit peu tout le monde, qui permet de se développer dans la même direction. Donc c'est pas nécessaire d'avoir une crise pour que ça existe. Je crois que c'est une bonne pratique en fait.
Super, merci beaucoup. On peut les applaudir.
Merci.